David Dackers, the miller from Kirriemuir who followed his trade in Otago and earned a high reputation for his skills, despite experiencing fire and bankruptcy. Like many 19th century immigrants, not much is known about David Dackers' Scottish origins, but it seems likely that he was born here in the Meryton area of Kirriemuir in about 1841 and was probably the son of an agricultural labourer, also called David Dackers, who would later become a handloom weaver. Now, David Jr.'s older siblings also followed this trade, which was then a very common one in rural Scottish households. But David took a different path, becoming a miller and working at this Balbirnie mill house near Brecon in Angus. It's not far from where he grew up, in fact. Now, this was a substantial complex that combined this large flour and corn mill with a farmhouse and a steading, and it's preserved today as a historic building of that time and that trade. In 1861, when the Scottish census was taken, David was listed here as a servant. He was 20 years old and had probably already completed his apprenticeship. This trade skill would have made him eligible for assisted passage to Otago, and he was later recorded as having come to Dunedin on the Robert Henderson in 1861 or 1862, although his name appears on no surviving passenger list. There would have been no shortage of work for a miller like David in Dunedin as the gold rushes boosted economic activity and especially demand for basic foodstuffs. He worked in Green Island, an area known for its flour mills, but he also seems to have operated a small dairy farm there. In 1874, he married Jessie Murdoch, a fellow Scot from Banffshire, who was working as a domestic servant here in Anderson's Bay. Now, they were already both in their 30s, somewhat older than the norm for getting married in that period, so they wasted no time in starting a family. Jessie bore David 6 sons and a daughter over the next 10 years, though 2 of the boys died in infancy. So far, so good. David's immigration had brought him both economic opportunity and a wife. By 1882, the Dackers were living here at Woodside on the Tyree, where David owned 12 acres of land freehold and operated a flour mill. Now, Woodside had been an important sawmilling site in the 1850s, and during the gold rushes, it was a key stopping off point on the main road to the Dunstan goldfield. Unfortunately, the Dackers' time here at Woodside coincided with the settlement's gradual decline from this heyday and the rise of a new settlement closer to the river at Outram. Business conditions would have been increasingly challenging. Then, in 1884, the mill burnt down in a fire and David suffered a serious loss, which within months led to him declaring bankruptcy. He was forced back to working for others, moving the family south to Waiwera, where he earned a good reputation for the quality of his work as a miller. By 1896, he was ready to strike out on his own again. He took over a flour mill here at Tapanui in West Otago. These are some of the stones from it, the mill ponds behind me. David modernised the plant, importing German roller machinery which replaced the old stone grinding process. Now, the Dackers really found their place here in West Otago, and their family grew up to play a significant role in local affairs. Their son David eventually took over the mill from his father, but in his later years, as he grew increasingly senile, David Sr. used to wander into the old mill and think he was still working it. One of his grandsons was given the job of keeping the old man safe while he acted out his memories. David died here in Tapanui in 1926, aged 88. Jessie then went to live with their daughter in Clyde, where she died in 1928, aged 89. They'd both risen from relatively humble circumstances in Scotland, lived to an old age, achieved a measure of independence here in New Zealand, and been able to raise a family. And really, in the end, that's exactly what most 19th century immigrants were looking for.